Welcome to a special edition of the Nant Fawr Brews podcast. My name is Andy. I'm a beer lover from Cardiff in South Wales. Nant Fawr Brews is the name of my podcast and the name of my brewery. Now, what you're looking at is when I went to the lovely county of Dorset and I visited Palmers Brewery. There's two thatched roofs there. They are the only remaining thatched roofs on a brewery anywhere in the UK. Now we're inside the brewery. And this is where the delivery trucks are, but look at that lovely old roof. You step in here and the history is all out ahead of you. Now look through that window and you can see the inner part of a water wheel that's still working. And the day we went there, it was still working, it was turning, it was powering. These are my accomplices on the brewery tour. Lots of narrow staircases, straight up through the levels. We went to the top of the building first and then came down. Now, we encountered this where usually that's where the liquor pours out after it's been in the boiler, and some of the brewery staff were pouring away beer. That's beer that they'd had to test with HMRC. Now we're up to the top of the brewery, and that is the bags of malt in this incredibly old wooden attic it gets absolutely stuffed full of malt. And you see the metal thing at the end looks like a trapdoor. That's the hopper that I think it's called a hopper. Anyway, the bit you tap it down. I was fascinated to see all these old markings, and they're not old. They're pretty current in chalk as they do the maths of how much malt needs to be stored and the recipes. And this to any home brewer is there you go, crystal 30. You know, these are things that we could write down ourselves, and it's lovely to see people who are producing professional beer doing these. There's the hatch that the beer goes down. It's one of these old school vertical breweries where the ingredients arrive roughly at the top and then with the help of gravity go down the building. Now that under the pair of scissors is just a sheet of paper that's been laminated that reminds them of the recipes. So they're only, because whatever they pour down that hatch is going in the beer. Now you've got old and new there. The green thing is the new mill and the little conveyor belt that takes the already sorted grain. That's a tool. They don't know what that is. Any ideas? They want to know. But next to the green chute is the old screener, and you can see the other side of it here. So that would take the grain and kind of shift and shake it to make sure that any impurities, bits of twigs, stuff like that, stones would fall out. But now it goes through this green chute. It's crushed into kind of crushed grain, and then that is how it's mixed in to create the mash in the mash tun. And that's the mash tun, and that's a kind of spinning arm that will sweep the grain that's left over down that hole for cleaning. So we're at the top level of the brewery here. Now we weren't able to go to the very top, but if you look through into the little door, there is the last ever open heating vessel for a brewery in the UK. And there's the boiler that goes underneath it, and that is where the beer is boiled. And that is these still working these levels and gauges to measure how much water is in the boil and how much water is going through to the next part. These are the fermenting vessels. A bit of glare there because it's behind glass. They've got two sets of fermenting vessels, and you can see that's fermenting vessel number 8. That lovely kind of brass thing is the sluice for the yeast if they need to release, if there's too much yeast on top and it's overflowing. Those are the cooling rods. Cold water will go through there and keep the beer at a temperature, at the right fermenting temperature. And they've got this is an old wort cooler, and that you can see the beer actually went down the outside of this, which is crazy, exposing it to all the elements and everything that might be in the air. They're not allowed to use this anymore because they would take river water, and the heat of the beer would then, through a heat exchange, the beer would be cooled down, but the hot water that's been heated by this beer would then be dumped back into the river, which is obviously not environmentally friendly. But this incredible vertical copper, and it's just sitting there. Right, here we go, boxes of hops. I mean, again, it's like being in your own little home brewery, just on a massive scale, but not so massive, not so industrial. You know, you can still see those bags of foil packed hops So it was really fascinating as a home brewer to go around this brewery, Palmers, in Bridport in Dorset, where they're still brewing in the traditional way. And we're making our way down the building now, so down these narrow staircases. You can see it's all wood. It's a wooden brewery with a thatched roof, and as they said, it is a miracle that they haven't had a fire ever. Good to see brewers sanitising. As all us home brewers know, brewing is basically cleaning. You think it's making beer, but a lot of it is cleaning. So good to see that's a massive sanitising vat. YC, yeast cooler. Yeast cooler? I think so. Anyway, that's where they kept the yeast to try and maintain the strain and to keep it in between batches. That is the old table where they used to get inspected by HMRC and customs and excise, whatever it was. Customs vat, I reckon that is. Customs vat number 2. Look at these old fermenting vessels. That's an old cider, what's it called? Barrel. It's bigger than a barrel, but it's half of one, and they turned it into a fermenting vessel. I love that. This is like a smaller version of that cooling machine that they still use now. So they pour the hot beer over that to cool it down. There's cold water running through that copper kind of rack. Here, this is their kind of smallest fermenting vessel that they used for test batches. So they're doing it just like home brewers. They're doing smaller batches to test stuff, and then when they're happy, they'll move on to the bigger batch. That's what that fermenting room looked like in 1938, and as it says, very little has changed. The feeling of history you get walking around this building is absolutely incredible. I had to take a picture of this because Tally Ho is probably my favourite beer that Palmers make. It's strong, it's 5.5%, but there you go, there could be 17,000 pints of Tally Ho in that fermenting vessel number 6. Now we're down onto the floor level now, and these pipes are where the beer flows through so that they can previously bottle, but now put it straight into cask. I mean, they were always putting it into cask. There's all the casks lined up that they are just kind of conditioning for a couple of days before they get shipped out. They have temperature control there. Apparently racking, we rack beer to transfer, and their theory was that you used to put the casks on racks, so that's where racking comes from. I'd never heard that before. This is now their state-of-the-art casking filling system where it'll fill the exact amount into the cask, and then they've got a cleaning system there that cleans the kegs and the casks. And actually when Hook Norton's brewery, the other big brewery in Dorset, when theirs went down, they went and shared it, so that's nice to see that's alive and well. This is the back of the brewery. There's that water wheel. You can't see it's turning, but I assure you it was. And that big chimney on the left it wasn't a brew day, but that would have been steam coming out of that. And there's a lovely old poster to round off your tour of Palmers Brewery. This has been a special edition of the Nant Fawr Brews podcast with video. I hope you've enjoyed.